Good afternoon, FBANC. Welcome to our third legacy panel. This time we are featuring FBANC presidents from the 2000s. My name is Mari Bandoma Colado. I am honored to be serving as this term's president. FBANC turned 40 this year, and we are celebrating with the theme of Pamana, or legacy. Over the past year, we have hosted panels featuring FBANC's dedicated past leaders and discuss what it was like to be a Fbanc attorney during the time, the social and political atmosphere during their presidency, and their thoughts on FBANC's role on these challenging times today. If you've missed those panels, please go check them out on our website. They are posted. And before I pass it on to our moderator, I want to thank Farella, Brown, and Martel, and also the Dulany Law Firm for your support of FBANC this year. And I am so pleased to introduce our moderator today, Nelson Pineda Lam, who is FBANC Secretary. And Nelson was just promoted to counsel employment at Uber. So congratulations again, Nelson.
Hey everyone, thanks so much, Maury, for that introduction. And just so honored to be able to moderate and host this panel with our esteemed 2000s FBANC presidents. I'll begin just by doing a quick introduction of all our panelists today. So Richard Tamor, our FBANC president from 2001, principal owner of Tamor and Tamor. We have Johnson Lazaro, who's a president in 2002, founder at Lazaro Law Group. In 2003, we have Rachel Puno Juliana, who is currently the public sector counsel at Verizon. From 2004, we have Katherine Zarate Dulany, who is now the principal and founder at Zarate Dulany Law. Billy Chan's our president from 2005, and he's a partner at Chan and Punzalang. Richard Pierre Roda is our president from 2006, who's a principal at Myers Nave. Rose Zimmerman is our president from 2007, and she's a city attorney at Daly City. And then from 2008, we have Rafael Ace Climaco, who is at the law office of Rafael S. Climaco, and he's also an adjunct faculty legal studies professor, specializing in immigration law. And then finally, we have Rhean Fajardo, who was our president from 2009 to 2010. And she just also got promoted to the Associate General Counsel position at the Oakland A's and dually the San Jose Earthquakes. So thank you all for being here today. Before we get started, I have a quick legal disclaimer I want to throw out there. So the opinions expressed on this panel are those of the speakers. They do not purport to reflect the opinions or views of FBANC or its members. So with that out of the way, let's turn to our questions. We have a packed, agenda for you here. So to get us in the right mindset, I want us to rewind back to the 2000s and just recall, 2000s, we have President George W. Bush. He was the president for most of the decade. J-Lo, she was been dating Ben Affleck and then married later to Mark Anthony. And that's kind of setting the scene of the 2000s where we were. And FBANC now is entering its third decade as an organization. And it's 20 years old and growing. And there's a question to you, panelists. For you as students, lawyers, board members, and ultimately presidents, what was it like being a part of FBANC? And how did you see the organization evolve during this time?
So since I'm the most senior member of this board, let me just start. I was a president from 2001 to 2002, and I was reflecting on this, and both the practice of law and really the world was a lot different back then. We may have all had cell phones, but they were flip phones and that kind of thing. That was before universal use of the internet. That was before social media. That was before smartphones. So at that time, there was a real transition in the way that we all practiced law and organized institutions like FBANC. And so it was really a transitional period, at least in the beginning, to focus on what we wanted to do with the organization going forward. And I remember having these discussions with Johnson and the people before me, what was our mission or our vision for FBANC back then. And that's all we could really do when we were president, just come up with ideas, because you can't really do anything in 1 year. We just kind of set the tone for what was going to happen in the future. And certainly technology did allow us to work more efficiently and smarter. Now it's just, it helps you work all the time now. I think that's not a good thing, but at some point that's where maybe the mid 2010, between like 2005 was when it really just started changing. And that's all.
Let me add to that a little bit, because I'm the second most senior. Oh my goodness, I can't believe I'm saying that. Second most senior FBANC officer, I guess, in that time. And I was Richard's vice president coming in. So I sensed a little bit of what Richard was saying. For me, coming in, I sensed that there was some sort of attention concerning what's the ideal or ultimate purpose of FBANC. And the tension is between, is FBANC primarily an organization that's gonna act like the NAACP of the Filipino community, more towards community involvement, addressing community issues, fighting racism, this and that, versus is FBANC more towards career advancement or step ladder towards shining your resume and getting into those plum jobs. So I sense that coming in as one of the issues back then. I can sense it's also still an issue now. And that's something when I became president, I tried to push it a little further. And I think Rachel is familiar with that as well. I think we were struggling with those issues at that time.
Yeah. No, I agree. So if we're going chronologically, I guess I'm the third most senior, and I know I was in both Richard and Johnson's administrations, right? I think I was the vice president for Johnson, and then I can't remember if I was the secretary treasurer for you, Richard, but yeah, I agree. And I think part of it too at the time was just outreach and visibility, right? So I even remember finding out about FBANC. I think I saw like a notice in the Recorder. It might have been under the meeting section. And I had always wanted to connect with a Filipino bar, so I didn't know there was one out there. And I remember seeing a notice in the Recorder in the meeting section and being really excited to come. And so I think that when it was during our years and then the years going forward, how did, I think we were talking a lot about how do we make sure that the Filipino attorneys who are out there know we're here. And so that was, I don't know if any of you remember the ones who followed me, the whole trying to get a website. So that was, that I remember very well, because I even remember trying to get the fbank.org, having to transfer it from the names of one president to the next, to the next, to the next, because that's just how we were registering it. So I do remember that being one of the things we were trying to focus on was how do we reach members? How do we let them know we're here? Including law students at the time. And then I have to say this too, I will be remiss if I don't say this. I feel like this is the decade where we started to see more Filipina attorneys, not only coming and becoming more active, but even taking more leadership roles. Because as you can see from this panel, there are what, 1, 2, 3, 4 of us. And I think prior to this decade, I think there had been, we were lucky that our first president was, Eleanor Esperos was a woman, but I think in the 21 years, there were only 4. I think I was the 4th. And then you see from here on in, that just started to increase more this decade, the following decade. So, I kind of have to do that shout out to the Pinay leaders out there. It feels like this was the decade that you started to see more and more of that.
Well, I guess chronologically it would be me because I was Rachel's vice president. I always followed her footsteps. She had she was a great role model and a mentor. And I, like Billy, was fresh out of law school, and I was a little bit nervous about being on the board and being on leadership, but I felt grounded, because there was so much support from really amazing attorneys, and it was I would characterize those years as discovery, discovery of me as an attorney, and discovery, I think, of us as an organization, figuring out where we fall in the community, and discovering our members, and just the amazing energy that we can create. And I remember in terms of interacting with other bar associations, Victor Wong was president of ABA when I was president, and we did a lot of collaboration. So it was through this exploration, through this discovery, reaching out to other organizations, kind of bringing together people. I think we had an informal minority bar coalition going. So it was kind of that start, that momentum, I think, was going on, during my time. And I just remember just really being just lucky, to have so many mentors, in this organization that I couldn't find, in my in my actual firm. So it was really great.
So I think I'm next, but I can't remember. And I might be next in succession, but in age, I think I'm actually before Rachel and Katherine. And at the time, I know Eddie Angelis is a participant. I see his comments there. Me seeking out FBANC, there were no women representations, and I actually kind of sought out to find some familiarity in the profession as well as the organization. I think I've heard about FBANC really kind of through undergrad. And I might have even Johnson contacted me. I'm jogging my memory, Johnson, but I think you had contacted me about this organization. And so happily, Rachel and Katherine were already there. So it was kind of exciting. And what I remember about what we did was really kind of expanding the scope of the organization. I remember from president to president, we kept trying to form a nonprofit. And that bylaws and that file, we actually had a hard copy file that went from president to president. And really that we were an association, we were an organization, and we were collecting money, and we were a bunch of lawyers that we kind of need to do it right. So I think that was one of the biggest things. And really doing that was expanding the knowledge that we had as an organization to get money, to have programs, to have committees. And I think that was kind of the big task. And then I left, and I think it was Billy, that kept moving. And, one of the things that I'm super excited about is really when you see it. And again, we talked about visibility. I do remember Rachel talking about the website that we never really saw, or we had a website, we couldn't get on the website. So a lot of the visibility was just us. It was us getting together. And that was actually the funnest part. I think we always got together. We always had food. That was the big thing, what we were going to eat. And that was our networking. And now it's so exciting to see that sort of those roots kind of formulated to expand, and, social media being such a big part of it, and I can't even keep up. We are a nonprofit. And so I think that's kind of like the exploration stages of us expanding it. And now you do see so much more women, familiar faces in this growing organization.
A little out of order though, because you came after me.
Is it, were you before me?
Billy was
Richard?
before
I can't
me.
remember. Okay, see, I can't remember.
Billy came after Katherine, but
I think in age, I'm first. I'm after Johnson.
That's true. I do that's true. I'm like, who cares about age anymore? I don't know. You all look great. Everyone still looks great. I just want to amplify that, because my first vivid memory of FBANC was actually meeting Rose and Eddie Angelis. And it's interesting that Eddie is sort of a common thread in this entire panel, actually, is because he was the one who I just remember him reaching out to me and saying, hey, you need to come to this. And it was a, what is this? And it was a lunch. And it was just a lunch with Rose, Eddie, and a couple of other attorneys. Johnson, I think you might have been there as well. It's possible. And but I just remember the idea that we were just meeting each other. And you all became my first mentors. I was just graduating in 01. And that's when I met you all. And then as soon as I graduated and got my first job, I just, all of a sudden, Eddie kept on top of me and said, you need to get on the board of FBANC, get started. And I think that's the common theme is we all, as it's happening now, just became part of the board and became part of the organization. And you were, I will always remember, be my first sort of networking family. And that's how I wanted to see FBANC for all of its members, was first and foremost a place that you could go that looked familiar for everybody. Like, we knew what our culture was about. We knew Filipino culture. We knew what it was about, for food, for family. And that theme has always been something to fall back on for me. And I wanted to make sure that that was maintained. And we always paid it forward, but also pulled up those who were law students. And even, I think we started, when I was there too, we started reaching out to undergrads and starting the pipeline. And I have vivid memories of actually meeting Christine Stark as an undergrad at Berkeley and just being wowed by her ambition and wanting to be a leader and wanting to be a lawyer. I think she was a freshman in college when I first met her, and she just knew what she wanted to do, and look at what's happened now. So that's, to me, what FBANC was in that time, was developing what it has now become, which we, in this era of time, stand on the shoulders of the people who obviously came before us, like Ben Reyes. Looked up to Ben quite a bit, still do. And of course, Eddie. And as you can tell, it's just so much fondness here. We're all still in touch. I reach out to Eddie sometimes. I've had lunch with Richard Tamor. I miss seeing you, Ace. You know, it's always been about family for me. And that's just what the time has been like.
Yeah, it's amazing to hear that family thread kind of just echo through the panels and the generations. And it's kind of hearing you guys talk about your mentees during that time, who became, the mentors for, the board now, and who we're looking at. You see that lineage kind of follow through, and it's amazing to kind of hear that echoed from you guys as well. So I'm curious, during this time in the 2000s, what did it look like to be a PhilAm attorney? What kinds of opportunities were available? Where were people landing their jobs? And what was the landscape?
Well, when I first was a law student back then, you got to understand, I came from an immigrant family, and my parents were immigrant, and so they were always being discriminated, right? They lacked English. They had heavy accents, and we were raised in downtown San Francisco. So I was encountering a lot of, manongs and manangs, the lolas and the lolos in the downtown San Francisco area, who are on the same boat, or are being discriminated against. Racism is pervasive, and so for me coming into FBANC, that's what I wanted to do, is more social activism. And, I tried to push FBANC towards that direction, but I also realized that there are other interests and other purposes and other people having different ideas. So for me, coming in, I primarily wanted FBANC to be a social activist. But at that time, I think that was too radical. It could still be too radical today. But that's my take.
Are we still going in order?
Wherever you guys want.
What's that?
Billy, are you going to talk or not? So I think I'm next in order. Rhean, were you before? I was after Angela, right? I was after
Until
Angela.
Billy moved just now, I thought it might have just been like a photo of Billy.
Yeah.
So you were before me. Ace.
I was before you. Okay. And I was after Angela.
But Rose already screwed up the order, so just go wherever you want.
Sorry
Yeah.
about that.
Go ahead.
I'm all confused.
Go for it.
Go for it.
Okay, so I was in law school at USF from 2001 to 2004. I knew Billy. Billy and I were good friends from undergrad, UCLA. And Billy went straight to law school after UCLA. So he, when I was in law school, sort of introduced me to FBANC. Rhean was a year ahead of me in law school. So she also let me know about FBANC, and Richard was a recent alum of USF. So right when I got to USF, I was already cognizant and knew about FBANC's presence. And I remember going to like when Johnson was president, his banquet. And we had a great time. It was a great, I'm like, this is a great organization. We're like dancing, we're eating, we're having a good time. It was a great way to network and meet people, which helped me later on when I started my own practice. I used to get the way, and I still have my own practice. It's been over 15 years. And I used to get a lot of cases from the FBANC guys, a lot of referrals from like Raul Picardo and Dennis Messina. They would always send things to me just to help me get on my feet. Even today, I still get people saying, "Oh, Attorney Picardo referred me to you, but he's not really taking cases right now. So can you take my case?" So for me, that's my personal experience of how I knew about FBANC. So from the minute I was in law school, from the time I started practicing, FBANC was always a very close-knit group for me. I'll echo the Richard's sentiment about technology, and how back then I was secretary for 2 years. I was secretary for Angela, and I think for Rose, I was her secretary. So I was in charge of the email blasts. And there was no constant contact back then, or MailChimp. I had to copy and paste the Excel sheet and then put it in the BCC field and then draft my email. And then I had to remember to do it. It wasn't going to be automatically done for me. And then the 501c3, I think Rose brought that up. That was always a struggle for us. And also Johnson's point about how much do we advocate versus not. I was president during the election 2000, before Obama was elected in 2008. So if you remember back then, tensions were very high. People were, not happy with Bush. The market had just crashed. People were very active. So we were trying to walk that line between how much do we advocate, how much do we not, we don't want to risk all of that. So I remember us trying to walk that line, especially when I was president. And I think Rose also mentioned how we collaborated with a lot of other bar associations. We used to have happy hours with La Raza, with ABA, the South Asian Bar Association. We would always do events with them. So we really expanded, I think, the networking of FBANC back then. And I know, just on another final personal note, it's great seeing each and every one of you. Having left San Francisco and being a suburban dad now, I don't get to see all of you very much, and I really, really do miss all of you. I used to share an office with Billy for how many years? And I've known him since I was like 20 years old. And I've known Johnson for almost 20 years. All of you. It's just really, really wonderful to see you. So point being is that FBANC for me has really been kind of my extended Filipino family. I come from a huge family. They're all in Southern California. They're not up here. And so FBANC really has sort of been my connection to the Filipino community up here. So before I start crying, I'll stop. But thank you for putting this together, FBANC. We really, really do appreciate it.
Ace, was it you that finally finished the 501c3?
It was not. That was like my #1 goal. And I was like halfway done. And then I think I got married and just life totally changed. So but whoever did it, I think it was, he works at one of the big firms.
I think it's Mark Peloton who finally
Yes,
did it.
he did it.
works for
Yeah, so kudos to him.
the government now.
Next panel.
Yeah. So, and I think Rhean, I was president. You were to be president, but you got married, and
I
right?
was
Isn't that
very, very pregnant with my
Yes.
now 13-year-old. So Ace stepped up, even though he was a little like, it's out of order, but I'm glad that you did that thing.
Yeah, for a while, being on the FBANC board was like it was like a fertility clinic. Like everyone was just getting pregnant.
It's true. I'll just add, because it's a good sort of piggyback to what Ace is saying. I knew that seeing all your faces here today would give me all the feels, which is why I sent you all that mushy email a week prior to kind of get it out of my system. But everybody here has been so influential in my life and in my career. Like Ace said, he and I were in law school together. Rich graduated just a bit before us. But not only did Ace and I go to law school together, but he is my husband's roommate. So we spent a lot of time together in our law school days and after. And we also worked for another attorney who shared office space with Johnson. So I got to spend a lot of time with Johnson when I was a law student and a baby lawyer. Rose took a chance and hired me as a deputy city attorney right after that giant baby was born. And I learned all about public law, which I had never known anything about or really had much insight into. But FBANC has been such a great family for me because I'm also in Southern California. So I didn't know anybody when I moved here. I'm for law school, and my first event was Johnson's dinner. My roommate at the time received the FBANC scholarship, and that was my first time hearing about FBANC. And we had that great experience. Like, this is so fun. Jerry Brown is here taking photos with us. This is awesome. And I think the actual, next event I went to after was a fireside chat with Eddie Angeles and Rose, and Rachel Puno was also there. And I had never met Pineda attorneys before I met Rose and Rachel. So it was so amazing to see them and that they were so successful in their respective careers. So it's great to see everybody. I hope that we can do this in person soon.
Oh, really
Thanks,
quickly.
everyone.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Catherine.
I was just going to say, I remember as a junior attorney, I remember not knowing a whole lot of attorneys and not seeing a lot of attorneys in roles of influence. And I think through our growth since the early 2000s, I mean, there's just this exponential, just growth in people in amazing roles. Rhean, to every one of us, just in in positions of power, judges, GCs, partners, people in a political office. It's amazing. And I think it has a lot to do with FBANC, being a network, being a connector. It's all about relationships and, putting an extra push, sending information that you wouldn't otherwise get. So I really I'm sure we'll get to it, but one of the things that I would love to see with FBANC is to continue that and foster, that relationship building, because I think that's where a lot of us got to where we are today, because of relationships and our connections to each other.
Yeah, I think it's just so powerful just hearing about how, seeing yourself reflected in a community of lawyers can inspire you to go on and achieve those things yourselves, and knowing that's out there. I'm curious, during this time you're talking about exponential growth, Katherine, do you recall how many members we had to start the 2000s to where we kind of ended? I believe now we're pushing about 500 members of FBANC currently in 2021, but wonder what it was like back in your guys' decade.
I still have the roster on my computer. Do you want me to look?
I can say off the top of my head, because I lived in that Excel sheet for a long time, it was about 200 members whose contact information we had. That doesn't necessarily mean they were paid members. And it was very, very difficult to actually get people to pay their membership fees back then, particularly because they had to write an actual check and mail it to us. I think it was Rose and Rachel who started the PayPal account. And when I took it over, it was always a mess because it was always attached to Rose's personal Yahoo email address. And we were always back and forth. And same thing every time we had to renew the domain name. It was this whole ordeal about who signed up for it, whose email address is it under. Things were not automated back then.
I have all these files on my computer. I'm looking at them right now. I see the receipts and all.
I remember using.
I had the PayPal account for a while.
Yeah. And I remember using 3 different metrics for membership. We would use like how many people are on the email list. And that was always around like 200, 250. And how many paid members do we have? That was always between like 30 and 60. It was pretty low. And then the third metric was how many people can you get to your dinner?
Right.
So for my year, I think it was maybe 200 people.
Yeah, because there are people on our email list who are not members,
Right.
right? Like members of other bar associations would be on our email list.
Well, and then you also have active members, probably, right, where it was a different story too, right? So you had the numbers on paper, but how many were actually coming to events and were actively involved. So I think that was, we were trying to get that to increase. But I remember the whole website thing. I mean, we were constantly trying to transfer that. I think I moved to New Jersey and I would still get these things. I think, Billy, it was you. We're like, okay, I got to transfer the fbank.org. So, and just trying to get that website even to have all the information it needed to, right? I think making sure the events that we had were listed on there in the beginning, it was just trying to even, I mean, now it looks fantastic, but at the time it was just trying to even have it, and then what information's on it, and making sure people can find it and reach out to find out events, make sure law students could find it as well. So that took a while. It took a while. You don't have the same presence now on the internet and all that, you know, and it wasn't as simple back then. So
yeah. Well, it's great to hear that.
Installation dinner. That's my question. Who had the best installation dinner? That's what I want to know.
Ooh, fighting words.
You know, although I will say though that even though it's all spread around, all you had to do was drop the name FBANC, and for some reason it would connect to somebody who would say, "Oh yeah, I'll help you out with that." And so, even though it wasn't really sort of tracked, I think my point is the network was so strong, and we would go back. The names that you said, Dennis Messina, Raul Picardo. I know that once I was in FBANC, I could just pick up a phone and say, I would call Eddie sometimes, go, Eddie, can I call this person? I say, yeah, here's his number. We didn't have text that much back then, right? It was either email or call. And it was just, that was amazing. And I just remember, even though Richard Tamor and I don't practice the same law, I would reach out to Rich and say, do you want to have lunch? We were in the same neighborhood when we worked. We were downtown Civic Center. Yeah, sure. And we would just literally shoot it just all day, like at lunch, and just talk about what was going on in life, talk about the profession. It was so informal that way, but those conversations were just so impactful in my career. I actually credit FBANC for my success because it was Ben Reyes who recruited me, because I met him at an FBANC, I think it was a picnic, actually, our summer picnic. And I told him what I was doing. He said, oh, that's exactly what my firm does. When you're ready to come over, give me a call. And that's literally all that happened. That's what this entire network has been so awesome about, is you can, and ACE is a perfect example too, you can be successful in your career just by being connected to FBANC.
I want to say Billy's dinner was the best dinner, by the way,
Yeah, I
because
think it was.
not only was it the first time we actually made money by not having it like at a big hotel, but he started the tradition of having Hennessy on the tables, which
That's true.
is the best tradition of all the Minority Bar Association galas, in my opinion.
you're gonna hate me for this, but what's the name of that restaurant again in Chinatown that we used to have it
So
at?
the Four C's.
Four
Seas.
Cs.
Yeah. When did that tradition start? Because I know before in the
Billy's.
last panel, was it Billy's?
Yeah, so I was on the board for maybe 4 or 5 years before I took over as president, and I would see that every year, we would have this big dinner at a hotel, and we weren't making any money. We would raise a bunch of money and spend a bunch of money, and then we wouldn't have any money left over. So I looked into different venues and found that restaurant in Chinatown, and we figured out we could make a lot of money, and I think we made $20,000 from my dinner, and that was a lot of money back then. That's nothing now, but back then it was a lot of money.
It's great hearing some of these traditions and learning the origin story in a way of where it came from, and even hearing the Hennessy on the table, which we still continue to this day, and even the PayPal account. We still have, I think, probably the same PayPal account, and we just cycle through whose email it's actually connected to. So wonderful to kind of like hear where it came from. So I have a question for you guys about FBANC today and what we've been doing. How do you see FBANC's role? What do we play in the community, and what should what kind of issues are we facing? Now with leaving the Trump administration, now entering the Biden administration.
So, I wanted to raise, I think earlier, and I think this will tie into what I'm hoping we'll see more of, is during our decade, representation was a big thing, right? And I mean, we've all mentioned Eddie Angeles, and Eddie, I see that you're out there, and this. I think that was a big thing for you, and I know that was how, you were sitting as a school board member in Daly City, and it was important to you when you were stepping down that be that another Filipino would replace you. And I think that's how you spoke to me, and we're starting to had me ultimately run for that seat. And when I left, that's when Katherine, I kind of talked to you. And I think that at the time was a big deal, right? I think there are so many Filipinos in California. There was not enough representation. I think at the time we did not have anyone in the California legislature who was Filipino. And so, that was one of the things I know that was instilled in me a lot during that time by Eddie, by, Mike Gingona, by Cesar, Cesar also, who had been running, and just a number of lawyers from FBANC who were stepping up to try to do public service, to try to be, to represent us. And then of course, now with even the judgeships, right, with Ben, I mean, I think those are all really important. I think, the community, the Filipino community looks to the legal profession for its leaders. And so I think that's how a lot of that, that a lot of the leaders are coming from FBANC and from other bar associations as well in California. And so I'm hoping to see more of that. I think that's really important. I think that representation hopefully will continue to grow. And especially now with this new administration, I'm hoping that there will be more of that. There'll be more of us Filipino lawyers who will start to look for those positions and start to seek those out. And I think we have built over the last few years, not just with FBANC, but now with the national organizations as well, the backing for that, right? We now, I think, are at a place where we have a lot of support if you just want to step up and do it. So hopefully we see more of that, more people wanting to go for those positions, more support behind it. At FBANC and other bar associations really getting to a place where they can start endorsing some of these leaders. And I know a lot of that has already happened in the last few years. So I'm hoping to see more of that.
Now, remember Rachel, back in our time, remember that was the time when we hold that 2002 at the Moscone Center,
Yes.
Convention of Filipino Professionals, right?
Yes,
remember
that's
that?
Right.
So I think that was the first only of its kind in which we organized. FBANC took the lead in summoning over Filipino lawyers from all over the United States. I was actually on the phone calling different bar associations in different states, asking them to send over their representatives to come to Moscone Center, because we took the lead in organizing that. And then we had our agenda on what Filipino lawyers all over the United States should be doing for the community. And that was, I think, the crowning moment of our administration, Rachel and I. And I'd like to see FBANC do more of that, taking the lead towards setting the agenda for Filipino-American lawyers. It's an ambitious agenda, but we've done it before. And looking into the future, I think that's something that should be in the minds of FBANC officers.
Yeah, I mean, you actually remind me that was maybe the first year, Billy, you might remember this, with when we had the PABA, FALSI, and FBANC do the first, joint conference in Las Vegas. I don't know if you remember this, that was one of our attempts to not just outreach to within the Northern California area, but within the rest of California, to try to bring these bar associations together. And of course now, and FALA has done that on a much larger scale. But I think that at the time was our attempt to try to start piecing together, okay, let's start to really become more united, and bring our, not just be in our little silos, but try to figure out a way to actually all come together. And the one you're talking about, Johnson, that wasn't even just the lawyers, right? That was the Filipino business associations, all the different organizations in.
That one was
Say that again, Billy.
That one was NAFA, right?
What are you eating?
I think so. Yeah.
It had a lot of A's, the acronym for that.
Yeah, it's like the.
This is your lunch.
That's right.
Billy.
Yeah, it's lunch.
Yeah, no, you're right.
That was a joke we always used to say to each other. But that was what Rachel was saying. That was sort of the foundation of what NAFALA has become, right? Because I think when I was in law school was when we started having that joint conference with the other organizations, and then it kind of just snowballed and grew from there. Where it's a huge organization now.
I think I'd like to see also, what I see with FBANC is keep expanding the pipeline, because there are more of us, but there's still not enough of us. And we see it all the time. And you still see the institutional racism, and you still see how we as attorneys of color, to this day, still just getting disrespected. It's subtle sometimes, microaggressions, and it's still so out there that we just need more of us out there. And if FBANC is reaching out even further back into the undergrad ranks, that's good. That's where I think we need to encourage those who are even considering the profession to know that FBANC exists for them too. And we're there to support them in what they're trying to do. If they're interested in the law and the profession, we're behind you and we'll support you that way.
Eddie just put a message in the chat that when we had the statewide Filipino Bar Association event, Chief Justice Tani Cantil-Sacauye was one of the keynote speakers, or I think she was the keynote speaker. And I do very much remember that and being so surprised that there was a Filipino woman who was so high up in, in the justice world. And she's always been so generous with her time to this organization.
Yeah, it's really amazing to see what FBANC has become, in the years following you guys, and the seeds that you planted, and how they're kind of making their way into what we do today. A question for you, because there's a lot of us on the participants here who are board members and maybe future presidents someday. What is some advice you would offer to someone who's looking to become president or is a board member right now as a part of FBANC? Anything you wish you would have known before you became president, anything like that?
I would say if you choose to take on a leadership role, like being president of the organization, just be really mindful that you're representing not only your board, but all the members of the Filipino legal community. So be up for the challenge, give your time and energy generously to the role. And I think you will find that not only will you be helping the organization and its members, but you'll be helping yourself down the road, because people will see that you are passionate about the community and about your work, and they'll get a sense of your work ethic, even if they've never worked with you, you know, like on a professional job type of level. They'll get to sort of know you in a different way, and it will benefit you in your career, I think, going forward.
I would say to incoming FBANC officers to encourage them to push the envelope a little bit. There is a wealth of community issues and challenges out there, especially now, racism, discrimination, that you can sink your teeth into. And I would push them to expand FBANC to get more funding so that we have a legal arm, so that we can act on certain issues in the community, and to be more out there, and to let people know that we're here advocating for their rights, advocating for justice towards Asian community and the Filipinos at large.
Also, learn how to ask for money. Learn how to close any of us or all of us in some way, because it's going to take money to do all the things. I agree with Johnson, and I do agree, of course, with Rhean, but it all takes funds. And so I like how you're doing it. You keep on asking, keep on pushing for funding, and we are successful attorneys. We are pretty well funded. So yeah, that's how to keep FBANC's system and process and the organization going is going to take that. And I think that more than anything, now that we're a 501c3, that does help a lot. So seek that funding so we can do the kind of things that Johnson and then Rhean have also indicated, and Rachel too, about representation.
Yeah, I think just to add to what Johnson was saying, don't be afraid to think big, right? I mean, I actually feel like what we accomplish, when I look now at what you all, the current board members, are doing now, it's just mind-boggling how much you all do now, and how all these things that it's so exciting to see. And you already see it. I mean, I already see it in all of you, that you're not afraid to think big. Some of the things that you've been able to do in these last few years have just been so impressive. And so I think continue that on. I think big like that. I think you can see that some of the things that we thought were not accomplished, you know, something that we would be hard to accomplish during our years, clearly it may have taken a while, but we got there. So I think don't be afraid to think big like that, and think about what are some of these things that we can accomplish, the organization can. And I don't think you limit yourselves. I think whatever you think we're able to accomplish, try and go for it.
So a quick plug while we're talking about fundraising. We do have our 41st annual installation gala on June 3rd. And if you would like to sponsor, there's a link in the chat bar. It's at fbank.org/annual dinner. And feel free to donate what you feel comfortable donating there. We appreciate everything we can get. And before we transition to the free chat time, I think we need to take a picture with the whole group here. Natalie, do you have the?
Yep, I
are you
have.
able to
I always
do
like
that?
to have people know that they're taking a picture, so that the Zoom is not like you're not looking in. Okay, ready? Smile. More fun. Thank you so much. So if we can all log off and head to that link that's indicated in the chat, so we can just have some breakout sessions and chat and get to know each other more.
Yeah, and one last thing, I just want to say thank you so much to all the panelists. Your words of wisdom mean so much to us, and just collecting the 2000s presidents in one Zoom chat, just amazing to have the wealth of knowledge all together here. So thank you for everything you've done.
Thanks,
All right, see you guys on the Zoom chat. All right.